Welcome to High Sci Halloween. I'm Amanda Rodriguez.
And I'm Kathy Millette. On this special Halloween edition, we're treating you to two of the most famous traditional Japanese ghost stories.
Hear the legend of a murdered wife who comes back as a ghost to haunt her unfaithful husband.
And the story of a very mysterious doll.
And stay tuned until the end of the show for all the upcoming Halloween events this month.
We've also got a look at some very cool Halloween costumes from last year's Mihama Costume Contest.
Stay tuned because all that and more is coming up right here on High Sci Okinawa.
Japanese ghost stories almost always involve a ghost who is coming back for revenge.
And we've got the ultimate story of revenge for you, the story of Oiwa.
The story of Oiwa has been passed down from generation to the next for centuries. It is one of the most well-known tales in Japan. Many centuries ago, there was a young wife named Oiwa who was married to a less than faithful husband. She was kind and gentle and loved and trusted her husband, but she was also a very sickly woman. Her husband had taken a fancy to a wealthy young woman in the village and wanted to marry her, but first he needed to get rid of his wife. Knowing he couldn't be accused of murder, he decided to use Oiwa's illness as a way to get rid of her without placing blame on himself. So he went to the village herbalist and said he needed poison to rid the house of rats that had infested his rice stock. Once obtaining the poison, he went home to his wife and found a way to poison her by slipping it in her tea. She quickly fell asleep, and while she rested, the husband went to spend time with his mistress, all the while dreaming of the day he would be rid of his wife. He didn't give his wife enough poison to kill her immediately. Her long, black hair fell out in clumps. Her face became paralyzed and grossly disfigured. When she finally saw her reflection, she was driven mad by the image. Her husband came home a day later and happily disposed of his wife's body in the nearest river. He told the villagers that her illness had gotten the best of her. Now he was free to marry. On the night of the honeymoon, the newly wedded couple were having dinner when the new wife's face suddenly became gross and disfigured. He was looking at the face of his deceased wife, Oiwa. He jumped away from his new wife, grabbed his sword, and suddenly began slashing in the air. His terrified new wife didn't know what was wrong with him and tried to get out of the way, but she ran into his sword, dying on the spot. The man ran out of the house and into a nearby bamboo forest, still slashing his sword in the air like a madman. Oiwa stood by a bamboo tree and he slashed at it, cutting it to a point. He then tripped and fell on the bamboo point, impaling himself. Oiwa had taken her revenge.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
That's very true, and I should know.
Coming up next, we tell you a tale of a very special Japanese doll.
Every little girl dreams of owning a beautiful, lifelike doll.
But this is one doll I wouldn't be putting on my Christmas list. Toy maker Koichi Oshiro loved children, and making toys for little boys and girls made him very happy. One day, he walked by an antique shop and noticed a beautiful doll in the window and immediately purchased it. Koichi was fascinated at the lifelike features of the doll and would sit at home and stare into the doll's eyes for hours until someone would pry him away. He decided that every little girl would love to have a doll just like this one, and he produced many replicas to sell in his shop. And soon there were hundreds of the dolls lining the shelves. Just as he had hoped, the dolls were a hit, and every girl in town wanted the living dolls. Koichi worked hard making the dolls, but he always kept the original doll with him wherever he would go. He would be spotted throughout town with the doll in the market, and when he was working at his shop, the doll never left his side. When it was time to go home, Koichi proudly displayed the doll in his home for everyone to admire. When he had visitors, everyone commented on the doll's lifelike features. But when Koichi would leave the room with the guests and the doll, he would hear gasps, and when he returned, his friends would be gone. When he would run into them in the market, they would tell Koichi that there was something very wrong with the doll, and her eyes were watching people in the room. Koichi became angry at his friends for playing jokes and stopped talking to them altogether. Several weeks later, his friends became worried and visited his home. When Koichi didn't answer, they called the authorities. They discovered Koichi sitting in his chair holding the doll with his eyes glued to her. He never recovered and was eventually sent to a mental asylum. During the investigation, Koichi's friends told the police that he became ill after receiving the doll. The officer turned over the doll and found a name inscribed on the bottom. They soon realized that the person who owned the doll many years ago was also institutionalized under similar circumstances. Koichi's toy store eventually went to a cousin who took over the business, and the lifelike dolls are still in circulation on toy store shelves all across Japan.
Well, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
Oh, you're so sweet. Scary stories aside, Halloween is a fun time to dress up, get out, and eat tons of candy.
MCCS will help you celebrate this year with Halloween parties at all of our clubs. And these parties aren't only for adults. We even have a special event just for the kids.
We've got all the best MCCS Halloween happenings coming right up.
If you can't make it out to one of our MCCS events, be sure to check out the Mihama Halloween Costume Contest in American Village.
Head out to Mihama on October 31st wearing your most unique costume, and you can win up to $500 in cash.
Now that's a prize worth dressing up for. We're leaving you now with some of the coolest costumes from last year's contest.
Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to stop by our Facebook page for a special behind-the-scenes look at how we made the dreaded Oiwa face.
Have a safe and happy Halloween.